Today we're going to show you how to set the IP address of a KeyDigital model that does not feature a USB service port. So most KeyDigital devices, as of time of this recording, have the default static IP address of 192.168.1.239. Now, what does static IP mean is that when you plug the KeyDigital device or any static IP device into your network, the device does not automatically adjust its IP settings in order to jump on that network you've plugged it into. So you may need to change the settings if, for example, you are on a subnet that does not begin with 192.168.1, and that's what we're going to do today. Or perhaps you need to change this IP settings if you have multiple KeyDigital devices because you don't want them all to be on the same IP address. You need a unique IP address for each. So when we look at the manual, we try to make it very, very clear about what is the default static IP address, just so that you don't spend a lot of time, waste a lot of time trying to find that. And here is what we're referring to when we say a KeyDigital model without a service USB port. Some devices do have a USB port that's typically now a USB micro port. And those make it quite easy to set this up. Just connect and open up the KeyDigital management software, as we'll get ahead to. But there are still, at the time of this recording, a few devices that don't have that USB service port. And that's why we made this video. And what we're going to do is just connect a network cable directly from the laptop to the KeyDigital device. We're not going to go through the network quite yet. It will go directly through. So as I mentioned, I'm on a different IP subnet from 192.168.1. And I know that by going into my command prompt and typing in ipconfig, all one word. And we see that I'm on a 10.0.0 type network. And again, the KeyDigital is on 192.168.1. So what we want to do is head into our Wi-Fi settings, just so you could visually see how this looks to you when we connect everything. We're going to go into our network and internet settings. And we're going into the Ethernet settings, where we see that the cable is not connected. We're going to the change adapter options, and we see right here, again, unplugged. So it's at this time that I'm now going to connect my Ethernet cable. And we see now that it has detected a connection, and it is identifying the network it's on. I'm going to go ahead now and either double click or right click properties. And we head into the Ipv4 settings. Double click, and we see right now, and this is what most of your computers will be at, is the option for obtaining the IP address automatically. In other words, your computer is normally a DHCP device. It adjusts its settings to jump on the network you've plugged it into. But what we want to do now is set the IP address of our computer, because this is the IP address of our computer we're doing on this Ethernet port, to be something on the 192.168.1 subnet. And I could choose anything here, as long as it's not that 239, because that's what our IP address is of our KeyDigital device. And 255.255.255.0 is our, I've just clicked in here and this automatically populates. Without getting too in depth, I actually like to do 255.255.0.0, which allows me, when I do my KeyDigital scan, to find all devices in the 192.168 subnet. I don't have to specify the last two or the second to last octet as a 1. Now, this is the other thing we manually enter, 192.168.1.1 as the default gateway. So it's just the first 3 of the octet, and then that last should be .1. So these have to be separate, the IP address of our computer and the default gateway. We press OK, we press OK again, and we should actually see, here we are, it's refreshing the Ethernet settings to identify. So now my computer itself is on a, so we see here, here's the wireless we saw before is still 10.0.0, but we see the Ethernet is 192.168.1. So we're actually running dual networks for our computer, which is handy in the case of setting up our when we need our KeyDigital tech support to come in your computer. So the next step is, and we could do this two different ways, but we're going to show you the most simplistic way. We open up KeyDigital Management Software Pro software, which I've downloaded for free from the KeyDigital website. I open up the software, give it a moment to open, especially if it is the first time that you've opened it. And just a disclaimer here, please do not remove KDMS Pro software from within this KDMS Software Pro folder. From time to time, people drag it to their desktop. Please do not do that. This is not something that gets installed, it is an executable, and therefore it requires all of these different assets inside of the folder in order to run properly. And we see it here. And we're going to now press Network Scan, where the KDMS, which is capable of scanning on your different networks, it's going to ask you, do you want to scan the 192.168.1 network or the 10.0.0 network? So this is quite handy. I choose the 192.168.1. And the scan begins, and this is going to scan through the entire 254 potential IP addresses of the 192.168.1 subnet. So it starts at 0, and it's going to work its way all the way up to 254. So it does take about a minute or so. And if that IP address were a lower IP address, we most likely would have found it already, but because the range is all the way through from 0 to 254, that's why it finds it in the later half. So we go ahead, we found it now, okay? 192.168.1.239. Here's our KeyDigital device, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to update the IP address to be 10.0.239. And before I do that, it's one more good practice is to make sure that what you are changing it to is open. It's not already occupied. So I'm going to ping space 10.0.0.239 just to make sure before I change it that there's nothing there already. And we see that there's nothing there. And it's going to give me that result a few more times, 10.0.0.239. And just like before, we have to match that gateway, all three of the octets, and then we just leave that fourth octet as 1. We see that these settings here are green. We press save, and it's now going to apply that updated IP address, and it is going to reboot our KeyDigital device. Okay, so the device is now rebooted with the new IP address. So what I'm going to do now is actually unplug my network cable from my computer, and I plug the network cable from my KeyDigital device into my network. So now I will, with that device connected into the network, as we perform the new scan, we see that the KeyDigital management software doesn't give us the option to choose dual networks any longer because my laptop is only on a single network now, which is the 10.0.0 network, which it's connected to via Wi-Fi, and the KeyDigital device is plugged in to that 10.0.0 network now with an IP address that has been assigned that is 10.0.0, right? So we see here that it started to find some KeyDigital devices. I have some other things on my network, but when we complete the scan, we see the switcher. And now at this time, we could do a number of other settings in here. But I do want to just spend a moment on a final note, which is from time to time, KeyDigital's tech support might ask you to send a line string command manually to the unit, to a KeyDigital unit. And so I'm going to show you here, we open up TerraTerm 10.0.0, and I enter the IP address of the device I'm connecting to. And sometimes we use Telnet port 23 or other port 23. Either way, as long as it's port 23, you should be okay. And now I'm going to press OK, and that socket has been created. So I'm now connected to the KeyDigital device, and I could enter the command string that the KeyDigital tech support technician has informed you to type in, and we see the feedback. Or we might, at tech support, just tell you to type in H for help, which gives us a full feedback of the API, the possible commands you could send, or STA for status. And let me just send that one more time. And you know, it did just kind of automatically do something there. That's because I'm running KDMS Pro and my Telnet session at the same time. So we're getting the activity in both windows. And that's everything.